What I'm going to talk about today is what to do when a guy that you are seeing or that you're interested in says he wants to break up or says that he needs space and you want him back. So there are a whole lot of key things that you should do and some that you shouldn't do. So I'm going to talk about those today. So when I was a teacher, one of my coworkers, she stopped me in the hall and she told me that her husband said that he wanted to move out and that he didn't love her anymore. And she was like, understandably, she was completely devastated, right? She was so upset. And she told me that she didn't know what to do and that she felt completely powerless and she was just beside herself. She wanted to beg him to stay. And after she left, she wanted to repeatedly drive by his apartment and, find out what he was doing and kind of stalk him. She wanted to call him. She wanted to leave messages on his phone. She wanted to tell him how much she loved him. And she didn't know if she could go on without him. And they had a small son, so it's understandable that she was really upset. When she told him about, or when she told me about her situation, I shared something that I had heard and read from a marriage psychologist that she could do. And I said, here's what you can say. You can say, I really love you and I don't want you to leave, but if you want to leave, I cannot stop you. It's your choice. And again, I love you. I don't want that to happen. But I just want you to know if you go, that I'm going to go on with my life. And I said, then what you need to do is don't beg him to stay. Don't drive by his apartment. Don't leave messages on his phone. Don't fall into an emotional puddle and cry in his presence, even though that would be really, really difficult not to do. You want to remain calm and you want to honor his wishes and give him the space that he is asking for. Well, a couple months later, she told me, I ran into her in the hallway at work, and she said that he had come back. He told her he had made a huge mistake, that he missed her and he missed their little boy, and that he wanted to come home. And I was like, yay, touchdown for love, right? So when a marriage is in crisis and when a man is walking away, often the best thing that a woman can do, according to many psychologists and counselors, is to give that man space. And the same is true in dating and dating relationships. So I hear women tell me all the time that the men that they have been seeing, or the man that they've been seeing, he said it's over and they're upset. And a guy has decided that he's interested in someone else, or he just isn't ready for a relationship. And regardless of the reason why it happens, it can really, really hurt a lot. And I have been there. So I was single for a long, long time. You may have already heard that. I was single until I was 46. And I had a lot of experiences, and this was one of them, when a man would pull away. So your first response, and I get this, I'm holding up my hand, if your first response is the fear of being abandoned or believe that your value is dependent upon a man, then your first response might be to move toward him when he is moving away from you. So that can be really, really challenging to do what I just suggested with this woman. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to move toward him, because it can make him move further away from you if he said he wants to leave. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to beg him. You don't want to tell him things like, I can't live without you, or try to convince him that your relationship is right. You don't want to call and leave messages on his phone. You don't want to text him, and this can be a huge temptation, right? Especially because texting is like right at our fingertips. It's just there and it would be so easy to do, but you don't want to do that. So instead what you want to do is you want to grieve, you want to give yourself some space, connect with friends for fun and also for accountability, so that if you are tempted, have somebody or some buddies, maybe more than one person, that you can reach out to during that time when you feel tempted to call. The other thing is, or to text. The next thing is you want to set some new goals for yourself. Be good to yourself. Like, do some things for yourself during this time. And also, if you need to get some professional help like counseling or coaching to move through that transition when a man has moved away from you and he's broken up with you, then go ahead and do that. So there's going to be a few things that will happen when you give him space. So the first, or that can happen, the first thing that can happen is that it's going to give you the opportunity to work on you. So if you're struggling with embracing your value and believing that you are worthy of love because this one person has pulled away from you, giving yourself some space in the relationship is going to give you an opportunity to do that. So when you decide that you're going to give him space rather than grasp for him, it puts you in the position of not being needy and not being controlled by that relationship. And it's going to help you realize that you are in control. And it gives you an opportunity also to look objectively at the relationship and what happened in the relationship. Because like I experienced in some of my relationships, things become a whole lot clearer after some time has passed. And when your emotions are all wrapped up in a situation and you're just right there in it and it feels very emotionally overwhelming, it can be hard to see things clearly. But pulling away for a little bit will give you an opportunity to do that. So when I was single, there were some relationships that were really, really confusing, and it hurt when those relationships ended. But after some time had passed, I was able to develop a more objective look at what really happened, what was my responsibility, what was the other person's responsibility, and really get a true assessment of what that relationship was all about. So it also gives him the opportunity to do those things as well. But when you're all up in his face, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but when he's saying he wants to pull away and you're still trying to convince him that it's right and it's good and you know that he shouldn't leave or whatever, it doesn't give him the opportunity to do that. But giving him the space that he needs will give him an opportunity to reflect, and it'll give him a chance to sort through if he has any kind of confusion about the relationship or his readiness for a relationship. May give him the opportunity to kind of reflect. But every time you connect with each other, it kind of keeps things stirred up. But when there's that space, it'll give him the opportunity to go, hey, you know, maybe like this isn't what I thought it was. And then it may be just like my friend's husband that he may come back around. I am coaching a woman right now, and she told me that there was a guy that they'd seen each other a few times, and he had pulled away from her, and she didn't think the relationship was right. And he just came back around because he'd had an opportunity to think about some things between the two of them. So they're reassessing their relationship. But when you stay in contact, it does not give you the opportunity to work out the conflicts inside yourself or whatever, right? So it doesn't give him the opportunity to work out those conflicts either. So giving him the space, like I said, will give him perspective that he needs. So when you say you don't want him to leave, but that you're going to go on with your life in a calm way, he's going to perceive you as being in control and calm. He's not going to think she's pressing me or she's desperate. He's not going to perceive you as pushing him. There was a story I heard about a man who had been dating a young woman in college, and I think they dated for a couple years. And he told her that he wanted to break up with her because they were going to go in different directions in their careers and their lives. And so he broke up with her, and she was really upset about it. But she didn't allow him to see that she was super upset or appear desperate. She just said, okay, you know, I understand. I can't remember exactly what she said, but what stood out to him is that when she got out of the car, he reached to hug her, and she's like, you know, no. So it let him know that she had boundaries and where she stood, and then he ended up coming back around later, and they ended up getting married. So this can be really, really hard, right? And it can be super difficult to do, but you can do it. I've lived this myself on both sides of the equation of being the one who was left and the one who left. So, again, if a guy says, hey, it's over, you don't want to move toward him. So here's one caveat about this, because you never want to pressure somebody. Here's one caveat about what I'm saying, is that you always want to give him the opportunity to express any kind of grievances or concerns that he has, or any kind of problems that he might have with you or with the relationship. So without even realizing it, maybe you've unknowingly hurt him, and you need to give him the room to share what has really happened in the relationship and to share his thoughts, and maybe for you to ask for any forgiveness that you need to ask for. Or maybe he's not happy for one reason or the other, and you don't know why that is. But if it doesn't solve itself, then you want to, if he still wants to break up, you want to give him the opportunity to do that. Again, you don't want to beg, and you don't want to plead, and you don't want to keep rehashing what happened in the relationship. Like, one of the things that anxious types can do, and I was one of those, is that sometimes for us closure is only closure when there's peace in the relationship, but sometimes there will just be knots in a relationship that will all stay tangled up, and there are things that we can't solve, right? And so we have to remember, okay, so if I've done my part, and I've sought to make peace in the relationship. I've sought to ask forgiveness if I need to ask forgiveness. I've sought to understand what really happened and to put the other person first. And then if they still want to walk away, I've done the best that I can. And that relationship may still feel knotted to me, right? It may not feel like there's absolute peace to me, because if I'm an anxious type, it's like the only thing that's going to feel peaceful to me is if there's total reconciliation. But sometimes people need to move on, and we need to move on for our own benefit and for theirs. So you can only do your part in making peace, and he has to do his part right. Or he has to do his part. So another thing is that the other person, like I said, they need to know that they want to reconcile with you. You cannot do that part for them. You can only do your part. And so here's another caveat, is that just because you give him space, this is obvious, doesn't mean that, and it doesn't guarantee that he's going to want to come back and he's going to want to reconcile with you. But what it does do is it gives you the dignity that you need over chasing someone who's walking away from you and either doesn't want a relationship with you or isn't ready for a relationship. Now, this is one of the hardest things if you struggle with rejection and with the fear of being left, right? This is one of the hardest things, and my heart just goes out to you if this is something that you're going through right now. So you want to be really, really careful about what you take in and what you take to heart when something like this happens. As far as if the other person is leaving, you want to make sure that the messages that you're telling yourself, that they don't define your value, that they don't allow a man to say, hey, this is how much value you have. Because if you do that, then what happens is you've given that person more power over you than they were ever meant to have, right? And then what happens is you've got all this junk that you're carrying in your emotional backpack with you into the next situation. So you don't want to allow another person to define your value. Another person, that guy is responsible for his reactions and you are responsible for yours. So there can be all kinds of reasons why a relationship doesn't work out. Usually they don't not work out just because, unless two people aren't a good match. But it could be that he's not ready for a relationship. It could be that he has fears. It could be that he's not over something from the past. It could be that it's moved faster than he wanted. It could be that there's just some things that he just thinks aren't going to work between the two of you. So there can be all kinds of things involved. But you cannot manipulate a guy to come back to you. You cannot manipulate him into thinking that it should work out between the two of you. He's got to do that on his own terms. So there are some coaches online who tell you, oh, you can say this and make a guy want you forever and all this. I don't believe that, but I do believe that you can position yourself and communicate in such a way so that it could make it possible for that to happen if there was a good foundation for the relationship in the first place, or if he might be ready later. So you can respond in a way that will encourage that to possibly happen. You also want to give that guy space, so when he's moving away from you, that it's not a bridge that you want to burn by pressing him. So I did this once with a guy who was moving away from me, and looking back, I was really young, and looking back, I did not handle it the right way. I was pushing him, and I remember him saying to me, Shanna, you're just not patient. You're not patient. And for me, because I was operating so much from my hurt and my own insecurities, it was really, really difficult for me to kind of let go, right? So in order to be able to do this, you have to remember where your value comes from and not think that your whole world and all of your identity is wrapped up in this man. Because if you do, obviously you're going to feel panicky and you're going to feel scared when he starts to move away. Not that you wouldn't, but what I'm saying is that you may press him in ways that you do not want to. And like I said, if you want to get some counseling or some coaching, do that. In fact, if you haven't yet and you haven't had a free 30-minute breakthrough session with me, I would be honored and delighted to help you. Just head on over to singleover30.net, and there's a tab at the top or a little spot that says coaching. Just click on that and you can sign up for a free 30-minute breakthrough session with me where I will help you work on something like this, or help you identify one of your biggest dating or relationship obstacles and help you overcome it. I just love serving women and who are over 30 who, you know, I know what it's like to be in your shoes. So my heart goes out to you, and I really want to help you so that you can learn how to attract that trustworthy, marriage-minded man. All right, and remember that the dream that you have to love and be loved is possible. It happened for me. It can happen for you too. All right, and I'll see you next time.